Poor Maid greeted Billionaire's deaf mother. Her sign language left everyone shocked. Subscribe to The Maid's Secret for more stories. Don't risk missing the next story. Follow, comment, and share. Let's begin. Eleanor Mitchell's hands moved methodically across the mahogany table, the soft cloth tracing circular patterns in the morning light. 28 years old, with hair pulled back so tightly it gave her a headache by noon, she was invisible in the Laurent mansion, just how the staff was meant to be. Polish until you can see your face in it, Mrs. Winters, the head housekeeper, had instructed when Eleanor first arrived 6 months ago. Though why anyone would want to see more of themselves in this house is beyond me. The Laurent estate stretched across 5 acres of pristine Connecticut countryside, a monument to wealth that seemed to grow more imposing with each passing day. From the outside, its neoclassical columns and perfect symmetry projected power. Inside, it was a mausoleum of marble and gold, preserved in a silence so complete that Eleanor sometimes found herself holding her breath. "Mitchell!" The sharp voice of Mrs. Winters cut through the quiet. "The East Wing needs attending. Mr. Laurent has called a meeting with his executives and everything must be immaculate." Eleanor nodded, never raising her eyes. "Yes, Mrs. Winters. And for God's sake, tuck that strand of hair back in. We maintain standards here." As Mrs. Winters' footsteps faded, Eleanor allowed herself a small sigh. She tucked the rebellious strand of auburn hair behind her ear and gathered her cleaning supplies. Just another day of polishing surfaces that reflected lives she would never live. 2 years ago, she had been Professor Eleanor Mitchell, faculty member at West Ridge College, teaching American Sign Language and Deaf Studies. Her small classroom had been filled with eager students, laughter, and most importantly, purpose. Now she scrubbed toilets in a house where no one knew her name. The East Wing's conference room was a testament to contemporary luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, a table crafted from a single slab of black walnut, and chairs that probably cost more than what Eleanor would make in a year. As she dusted the elaborate light fixtures, voices drifted in from the hallway. "Arrival this afternoon. His mother is staying indefinitely this time." Eleanor's ears perked up. In 6 months, she had never seen any of Alexander Laurent's family members visit the mansion. "God help us all," came the response. "You know how he gets when she's here. Just remember, don't stare, don't attempt to communicate unless spoken to first. And for heaven's sake, don't mention her condition." Eleanor's hand paused mid-polish. Condition? She had heard whispers about the Laurent family, but concrete details were scarce. Alexander Laurent, 34, self-made tech billionaire, notorious workaholic, and according to the tabloids Eleanor occasionally glimpsed in the staff break room, ruthlessly private about his personal life. The conference room door swung open suddenly, and Eleanor nearly dropped her duster. "Still working in here? Clear out now." The cold command came from Thomas Reed, Laurent's personal assistant, a man whose perpetual scowl seemed etched into his features. Eleanor gathered her supplies quickly, keeping her head down as she moved past him. Just as she reached the doorway, Reed added, "And Mitchell, make yourself scarce this afternoon. The less staff visible during Mrs. Laurent's arrival, the better." The staff quarters buzzed with nervous energy that afternoon. Eleanor sat in the small break room, picking at a sandwich as fragments of conversation floated around her. "Deaf as a post, they say. Communicates through some fancy interpreter. Drove her husband to an early grave with the frustration." Eleanor's grip tightened on her sandwich. The casual cruelty of the comments made her stomach turn. She had spent years advocating against exactly this type of ignorance, before everything fell apart. "You're wanted upstairs." Mrs. Winters appeared suddenly in the doorway, her face pinched with displeasure. "There's been a spill in the main foyer. Clean it up before they arrive." Eleanor hurried upstairs, mop and bucket in hand. The mansion's grand entrance was empty when she arrived, sunlight streaming through the massive skylight, illuminating specks of dust that danced in the air like tiny stars. The spill was hardly worth the panic, just a small puddle where someone had apparently shaken off an umbrella. Eleanor worked quickly, eager to disappear before the Laurent matriarch arrived. She was just wringing out the mop when the massive front doors swung open. Too late. Alexander Laurent entered first, tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Eleanor's yearly salary. His features might have been handsome, if not for the perpetual tension that lined his face, the look of a man who had never learned to relax. Behind him came 2 assistants fussing with bags and coats, and then her. Vivienne Laurent entered the mansion with the quiet dignity of a woman who had learned to navigate a world that wasn't built for her. In her mid-60s, with silver-streaked dark hair, and the same sharp jawline as her son. She moved with a grace that commanded attention despite her silence. Eleanor froze, mop in hand, willing herself to become invisible against the wall. But it was too late. She had been spotted. "What are you doing here?" Alexander Laurent's voice cut through the air. "Staff was instructed to remain out of sight during my mother's arrival." Eleanor lowered her gaze. "I apologize, sir. There was a spill that needed immediate attention." Laurent's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, his mother stepped forward, her attention fixed on Eleanor. With elegant, practiced movements, Vivian Laurent's hands began to form shapes in the air. A question. The mansion staff looked on in awkward silence. Reed stepped forward, pulling out his phone, presumably to use a translation app. But something in Eleanor sparked to life, a remnant of her former self, of the teacher she had once been. Without thinking, her hands responded, signing back. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Laurent. I hope your journey was comfortable." The silence in the foyer deepened to something profound. Vivian Laurent's eyes widened, then crinkled with delight. Her hands moved again, faster this time, a waterfall of silent communication. "Thank you. It's refreshing to be greeted properly for once. What is your name?" Eleanor's heart pounded as she signed back. "Eleanor Mitchell. I work in housekeeping." Vivian turned to her son, her hands moving in excited gestures. Alexander Laurent's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion, his eyes never leaving Eleanor. "My mother wants to know where you learned to sign," he said, his voice measured but with a new edge of curiosity. Eleanor swallowed hard. This was dangerous territory. "I picked it up some time ago," she signed and spoke simultaneously, keeping her answer deliberately vague. Vivian's hands moved again, and Eleanor couldn't help but smile at the comment. "What did she say?" Laurent demanded. Eleanor hesitated. "She said that my signing has an academic precision to it, that I sign like a teacher, not someone who picked it up." Something flashed in Alexander Laurent's eyes. Interest, suspicion, or perhaps both. He studied Eleanor with the calculating gaze of a man who had built an empire by seeing what others missed. "Mitchell, is it?" he finally said. "Yes, sir. It seems you've been holding out on us. Report to my office in 1 hour. It appears my mother could use your unexpected skills during her stay." As the Laurent entourage moved deeper into the mansion, Vivian looked back over her shoulder, her hands forming one last message meant only for Eleanor. "Thank you for seeing me," she signed. Most people only see the silence. Eleanor stood frozen in the now empty foyer, her heart racing. After months of careful invisibility, of burying her past beneath the uniform of servitude, a simple act of kindness had exposed her. The very thing she had been running from, her former life, had just been thrust into the spotlight. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a warning bell sounded. Because the Laurent name hadn't been entirely unfamiliar when she'd first taken this job, there had been something, a connection she couldn't quite place, to the scandal that had destroyed her career and her reputation. As she put away her cleaning supplies, Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. In 1 hour she would stand before Alexander Laurent, a man known for uncovering secrets and exploiting weaknesses, and she had just revealed that she possessed the one skill his mother needed most. What Eleanor didn't know yet was that her simple act of communication had already set in motion events that would unravel the carefully constructed silence of the Laurent mansion. Because some secrets can't stay buried forever, and some truths demand to be heard, even when they're spoken without a sound. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked relentlessly forward, each second bringing Eleanor closer to a confrontation that would change everything. In exactly 58 minutes, she would learn that her past and Alexander Laurent's fortune were connected by threads more tangled than she could possibly imagine. And by the time the truth emerged, nothing in the silent mansion would ever be the same again. Eleanor stood outside Alexander Laurent's office, her palms damp with nervous perspiration. The massive oak door loomed before her like a barrier to another world. She smoothed down her uniform, took a deep breath and knocked. "Enter," came the curt response. Laurent's office was a testament to power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate, walls lined with books that appeared untouched, and a desk large enough to land a small aircraft. Alexander himself stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the fading afternoon light. "Mitchell," he said without turning. Prompt, at least. "Yes, sir." He turned then, his steel-gray eyes assessing her with unsettling precision. "Tell me about your signing abilities." Eleanor kept her expression neutral. "I learned American Sign Language some years ago. It's been a while since I've used it regularly. That's not what my mother says. Laurent moved to his desk, picking up a tablet. She was quite impressed. Said you sign with academic fluency. Those were her exact words. Eleanor's heart quickened. I'm glad I could be of help to Mrs. Laurent. Help, Laurent repeated as if testing the word. Yes, that's precisely what I'm interested in discussing. He gestured to a chair opposite his desk. Sit. Eleanor perched on the edge of the seat, back straight, hands folded in her lap. My mother will be staying with us indefinitely, Laurent continued. Her interpreter recently retired and finding a suitable replacement has proven challenging. I see. No, I don't think you do. Laurent leaned forward. My mother is not merely deaf, Ms. Mitchell. She is Vivienne Laurent, board member of the Laurent Foundation, which oversees charitable donations exceeding $200 million annually. She requires someone who can communicate with discretion, someone who understands the nuances of business and philanthropy. Eleanor fought to keep her expression neutral. I'm just a housekeeper, Mr. Laurent. Are you? His gaze sharpened. Because housekeepers typically don't sign with academic precision, they don't tense up at the mention of credentials, and they certainly don't have calluses on their hands that suggest years of signing rather than months of scrubbing floors. A chill ran through Eleanor. He was observant, dangerously so. I'd like to make you an offer, Laurent continued. Temporary reassignment as my mother's interpreter and companion. Double your current salary, plus a private suite in the East Wing for the duration of her stay. The offer was generous. Too generous for a simple skill set. Eleanor's instincts screamed caution. May I ask why me, sir? Surely there are professional interpreters available. My mother trusts you. Laurent's expression remained unreadable. That's rare and valuable. Before Eleanor could respond, the office door opened. Vivienne Laurent entered, her silver-streaked hair now pulled into an elegant chignon. She smiled when she saw Eleanor, her hands immediately moving in greeting. I hoped you would be here, she signed. Has my son made his offer yet? Eleanor nodded, signing back. He has, Mrs. Laurent. It's very generous. And you're hesitating, Vivienne observed, her hands creating the words with elegant precision. Why? Laurent watched their exchange with intensity. What is she saying? Eleanor translated smoothly, omitting Vivienne's astute observation about her hesitation. Vivienne's eyes sparkled with something like mischief. Tell him I said you should accept, and that he should stop looking so suspicious. You're exactly what I need. As Eleanor translated, Laurent's expression softened marginally. Then it settled. You'll begin tomorrow. He passed her a contract. Standard confidentiality clauses, nothing leaves this house. Later, as Eleanor packed her meager belongings in the staff quarters, Mrs. Winters hovered nearby, her disapproval palpable. Quite the promotion, she sniffed. One must wonder what else you've been hiding. Eleanor continued folding her clothes. Just a skill that happens to be useful, Mrs. Winters. Well, the housekeeper said, lowering her voice. Be careful up there. The last person who got close to the Laurent family's secrets didn't fare well. Eleanor paused. What do you mean? I mean, Mrs. Winters leaned closer. There's a reason Alexander Laurent keeps his mother at arm's length. There's history there. Dark history. And now you're right in the middle of it. That night in her new suite, a space larger than her entire apartment had been, Eleanor stared at the ceiling, sleep eluding her. Tomorrow she would step into Vivienne Laurent's world, a world adjacent to the man whose name had been at the periphery of the scandal that destroyed her. Her phone lit up with a notification, a text from an unknown number. Eleanor Mitchell, didn't expect to find you there. Watch yourself, Elle. The message sent a wave of cold fear through her. Only one person would contact her like this. Lisa Donovan, her former colleague, the only person who had stood by her when everything fell apart. Lisa, who had warned her that the financial collapse of Westridge College's Deaf Studies program hadn't been accidental, that it had been engineered by powerful interests that might include the Laurent Technology Group. Eleanor deleted the message, her hands shaking. She was close now, perhaps dangerously close, to discovering whether those suspicions had been true, and if they were, she was sleeping under the same roof as the man responsible for destroying everything she had worked for. As moonlight cast long shadows across her new quarters, Eleanor made a decision. She would accept this position, not just for the money, but for the truth, because somewhere in this silent mansion lay answers she had been seeking for 2 years. What she didn't yet realize was that Alexander Laurent was conducting his own investigation into her, and by morning, he would discover exactly who Eleanor Mitchell used to be. The game of secrets had begun, and in the Laurent mansion, Silence had never been so dangerous. The morning light filtered through the east wing's tall windows, casting long shadows across Eleanor's new suite. She had slept fitfully, haunted by Lisa's cryptic text, and the growing sense that she had walked willingly into a lion's den. Her new wardrobe, delivered mysteriously overnight, contained tailored clothes befitting a personal assistant rather than a housekeeper. Eleanor selected a modest navy dress, trying to ignore how perfectly it fit. Someone had done their research. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Opening the door, she found Vivienne Laurent waiting, elegant in cream silk, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Good morning," Eleanor signed, surprised. "I was just coming to find you. I thought we might have breakfast on the terrace," Vivienne replied, her hands moving with graceful precision. "I've instructed the kitchen to prepare something special." As they walked, Eleanor couldn't help but notice how the staff's eyes followed them, some curious, others suspicious. The transformation from invisible maid to the matriarch's chosen companion had happened overnight, and in a house built on hierarchy, such changes were seismic. The terrace overlooked meticulously landscaped gardens, where fountains sparkled in the morning sun. A table had been set with fine china and silver, fresh flowers arranged in a crystal vase. "Please," Vivienne signed, indicating a chair. "Sit with me." As they settled, Vivienne studied Eleanor with unnerving intensity. "You're wondering why I chose you," she signed finally. Eleanor nodded cautiously. The question had crossed my mind. "In a world of noise, I've become very good at observing people," Vivienne's hands explained. "Your eyes, Eleanor Mitchell. They hold stories, sadness, purpose." She paused, her expression softening. "And when you signed to me yesterday, I saw something even rarer, authenticity." A server appeared, placing a basket of pastries between them. Vivienne waited until they were alone again before continuing. "Now tell me," she signed, "what brought Professor Eleanor Mitchell from teaching ASL at Westridge College to scrubbing floors in my son's house?" Eleanor froze, her teacup suspended midway to her lips. "How did you know who you are?" Vivienne's smile held no malice. "I'm deaf, not disconnected. I was on the board of the National Deaf Education Association when your program collapsed. It was a tragedy, one of the most promising initiatives for integrated learning destroyed by financial mismanagement." The bitter irony of those words made Eleanor's chest tighten. "That's the official story," she signed carefully. "And the unofficial one?" Vivienne's eyes narrowed with interest. Before Eleanor could respond, Alexander Laurent strode onto the terrace, a tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. His expression darkened when he saw them together. "Good morning, Mother," he said, signing simultaneously. Basic signs, Eleanor noted, but competent enough. He nodded curtly to Eleanor. "Mitchell." "Alexander," Vivienne signed, her expression cooling noticeably. "You're interrupting our breakfast." He switched to signing only, his movements sharp with barely concealed irritation. "I need to speak with your new interpreter." "Alone." Vivienne's hands fluttered dismissively. "Whatever you need to say can be said in front of me." The tension between mother and son crackled in the air. Finally, Laurent placed his tablet on the table, turning it toward Eleanor. On the screen was a news article dated 18 months earlier. "Westridge College professor makes fraud allegations, faces termination." "You failed to mention your rather colorful professional history," Laurent said coldly. "Perhaps you'd like to explain why a former educator accused of making false allegations against her employers is now working in my home?" Eleanor's hands remained perfectly still in her lap as she maintained eye contact. "My employment application disclosed my previous work experience. The circumstances of my departure were not requested." "A convenient omission." Laurent's jaw tightened. "Especially considering your allegations involved financial fraud connected to technology investments, my primary business sector." Vivienne tapped the table sharply, drawing their attention. "I invited Eleanor to breakfast, Alexander. Your interrogation can wait." For a moment, mother and son engaged in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Laurent straightened, adjusting his immaculate tie. "We'll continue this discussion in my office." 1 hour. He left without waiting for a response. When he was gone, Vivienne reached across the table, touching Eleanor's hand lightly. "Now I understand the sadness in your eyes," she signed. "But there's something you should know about my son. He values truth above all things, even when it hurts him." Eleanor swallowed hard. "And what if the truth implicates him?" A shadow passed across Vivienne's face. "Then he would want to know that most of all." An hour later, Eleanor stood once again before Alexander Laurent's imposing desk. This time, Thomas Reed was present, his thin smile suggesting he'd been waiting for this moment. Professor Eleanor Mitchell, Laurent began without preamble, former director of the Deaf Studies program at Westridge College, terminated after making unsubstantiated allegations of financial fraud against the college board. He looked up from the file before him. Allegations that specifically mentioned technology investment firms diverting endowment funds. Eleanor kept her voice steady. Those allegations were never investigated properly. Because they were baseless, Reed interjected. As the board concluded. The board that stood to lose millions if the truth came out? Eleanor countered, surprising herself with her boldness. Laurent studied her with renewed interest. You believe the Laurent Group was involved? It wasn't a question, but Eleanor answered anyway. I had evidence that endowment funds meant for our program were being channeled through shell companies into private technology investments. One of those companies shared an address with a Laurent Group subsidiary. Reed laughed dismissively. Circumstantial at best. Delusional at worst. Yet here you are, Laurent said quietly, working in my house, gaining my mother's confidence. His eyes narrowed. One might call that calculated. Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks. I had no idea this was your house when I applied. The staffing agency never disclosed the employer's name until after I was hired. Convenient. It's the truth. Eleanor met his gaze unflinchingly. And if you want me gone, just say the word. Laurent leaned back, his expression inscrutable. That's the curious thing, Ms. Mitchell. My mother insists you stay. He glanced at a document on his desk. She's threatened to withdraw from the Foundation's annual gala if I dismiss you. Reed looked alarmed. Sir, given the circumstances, I'm well aware of the circumstances, Reed. Laurent cut him off, his attention still fixed on Eleanor. Here's what's going to happen. You will continue as my mother's interpreter. You will fulfill your duties with absolute discretion, and you will grant me access to whatever evidence you claim to have. Eleanor hesitated. And in return, I will personally review your allegations. If and only if they have merit, I will ensure a proper investigation. His expression hardened. But if this is some misguided attempt at revenge or extortion, I will make sure you never work again. Are we clear? The offer stunned Eleanor. After 2 years of closed doors and ruined reputation, someone was finally willing to look at her evidence, even if that someone might be implicated by it. We're clear, she said finally. As she turned to leave, Laurent added, One more thing, Mitchell. My mother doesn't know about the specific nature of your allegations. I'd prefer to keep it that way. That evening, Eleanor sat in her suite, staring at an encrypted email from Lisa. The attached files contained everything they had managed to salvage before Eleanor's office was cleared and her computer confiscated. Financial records, investment trails, board meeting minutes with suspicious redactions. Her finger hovered over the send button. Sharing this with Laurent felt like handing ammunition to the enemy. Yet something in his eyes when he had made the offer suggested he truly didn't know. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Opening the door, she found Vivian, now dressed more casually, a small wooden box in her hands. May I come in? She signed after setting down the box. Eleanor nodded, quickly closing the email on her laptop. Vivian's eyes moved to the computer, then back to Eleanor. Secrets, she signed with a knowing smile. This house is full of them. She placed the wooden box on the coffee table between them and opened it, revealing yellowed envelopes tied with faded ribbon. My letters, Vivian explained, her fingers moving delicately, the ones Alexander never received. Eleanor stared at the collection of yellowed envelopes, their edges softened by time. I don't understand, she signed, looking up at Vivian's face. For 15 years, I wrote to my son every month. Vivian's hands moved with measured grace. Letters about his father, about our family, about truths he needed to know. Her expression clouded. I only discovered recently that he never received them. Eleanor carefully lifted one of the envelopes. The return address had been marked refused in bold red ink. Who would do this? She asked. That, Vivian signed, is what I've been trying to discover. She settled more comfortably on the sofa. Alexander believes I abandoned him after his father died, that I chose silence over him. The pieces began to align in Eleanor's mind. That's why there's such tension between you. Vivian nodded, her eyes reflecting years of pain. My son built an empire on the belief that he was entirely alone in the world. He doesn't know that I fought to reach him, that someone deliberately kept us apart. Eleanor gently replaced the letter. Why are you showing me this? Because, Vivian signed, her movements becoming more emphatic. The same person who intercepted these letters was likely involved in what happened to your program at Westridge. The revelation struck Eleanor like a physical blow. "How do you know about that?" A sad smile crossed Vivian's face. "Inns, you think my son is the only one who can conduct research? The moment you signed to me in that foyer, I knew you were familiar. It took only hours to place you." Her gaze intensified. "Eleanor Mitchell, the professor who stood up to corruption and lost everything." Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she signed. "Your son believes my allegations were unfounded." "My son," Vivian responded, "believes what he has been told by people he trusts, people who have been lying to him for years." She tapped the box of letters. "Just as they lied about these." The implications were staggering. If Vivian was right, the same person who had orchestrated the downfall of Eleanor's program had also deliberately severed the relationship between mother and son. "Who?" Eleanor signed, the question burning in her. "I have my suspicions." Vivian's expression hardened. "But suspicions are not proof, and Alexander responds only to proof." She reached for Eleanor's hands, squeezing them gently. "That's why I need you, not just as my interpreter, but as someone who understands what it means to fight for truth." Eleanor felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Help me bridge the silence between me and my son," Vivian signed. "Help me show him that what happened to you and what happened to us are connected by the same thread." Before Eleanor could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Alexander Laurent. "My office. Now, regarding your evidence." Vivian noticed the change in Eleanor's expression. "He's calling for you?" Eleanor nodded. "He's reviewed my evidence." A complex emotion crossed Vivian's face. "Then go. But remember, whatever he shows you, whatever he says, the full truth is still hidden." The walk to Laurent's office felt longer than ever, each step carrying Eleanor closer to a confrontation 2 years in the making. She had forwarded her evidence an hour earlier, not expecting such a quick response. Laurent was standing at the window when she entered, his silhouette sharp against the evening sky. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Your evidence is compelling," he said without preamble, "but incomplete." Eleanor's heart raced. "You admit there was fraud?" "I admit," Laurent said carefully, "that the investment patterns you identified are suspicious. Endowment funds being channeled through multiple entities before ending up in private accounts." He moved to his desk, tapping his tablet, "including a subsidiary registered to this address." The screen showed a corporate registration for Meridian Technologies, listing an address Eleanor recognized as Laurent Group headquarters. "However," he continued, "Meridian Technologies is not, nor has it ever been, a legitimate Laurent Group subsidiary." His eyes met hers. "Someone used my company as a front." Eleanor felt her certainty waver. "That's convenient." "It's the truth." Laurent's voice hardened. "I've built my reputation on ethical business practices. The Laurent name stands for integrity." He pushed another document across the desk. "Which is why I've already initiated an internal investigation." Eleanor scanned the document, an official directive authorizing a forensic audit of all Laurent Group transactions connected to Westridge College. "Why would you do this?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. Laurent's expression shifted subtly. "Because if someone used my company to commit fraud, I want them exposed." He paused. "And because my mother seems to believe in you, that counts for something." Eleanor studied him, searching for deception and finding none. "Your mother showed me something tonight. Letters she wrote to you for years. Letters you never received because someone marked them refused and sent them back." Laurent went completely still. "What letters?" "Monthly letters for 15 years. About your father, your family history." Eleanor watched understanding dawn in his eyes. "Someone deliberately kept you from receiving them." "That's impossible," Laurent said, but doubt had crept into his voice. "My mother lost interest in communicating with me after my father died." She retreated into her silence. "Did she?" Eleanor challenged. "Or is that what someone wanted you to believe?" For the first time since she'd met him, Alexander Laurent looked uncertain. "Where are these alleged letters now?" "In a wooden box in my suite. Your mother brought them to me." Eleanor held his gaze. "She thinks the person who intercepted them is the same person who framed me and stole from Westridge College." Laurent's jaw tightened. "Reed," he said quietly. "Your assistant?" Eleanor asked, surprised by the certainty in his voice. "Thomas Reed has been with me since the beginning," Laurent explained. "He managed all personal correspondence while I built the company. He would have been the one to process any letters from my mother." The pieces were falling into place with terrible clarity. And Reed was on the Technology Investment Committee for Westridge College, Eleanor added. His name appeared in several of the board minutes I flagged. Laurent reached for his phone. I need to speak with him immediately. Wait, Eleanor said. If he realizes we suspect him, he'll destroy any evidence. Laurent paused, his finger hovering over the call button. Their eyes met in a moment of unexpected alignment. Two people who had been manipulated by the same invisible hand. What do you suggest? He asked. The annual foundation gala, Eleanor replied. Your mother mentioned it's happening soon. Will Reed be there? Of course. He oversees all major events. Then that's our opportunity. Eleanor leaned forward. We use the gala to access his records while he's occupied. If he's been diverting funds or intercepting personal communications, there will be traces. Laurent considered her proposal, his analytical mind clearly weighing risks and benefits. It's in 3 days, he said finally. Not much time to prepare. I've been preparing for 2 years, Eleanor reminded him. A faint smile, the first she'd seen from him, touched his lips. Then it seems we have an alliance, Ms. Mitchell. As Eleanor left the office, the weight of the past 2 years felt somehow lighter. For the first time since her world collapsed, she had hope and an unlikely ally. What she didn't know was that Thomas Reed was at that very moment accessing the mansion's security system, reviewing footage of Vivian entering Eleanor's suite with a wooden box. The man who had carefully managed the Laurent Empire's shadows for years was not about to let his work unravel because of a curious maid and some old letters. In the quiet of his private office, Reed sent a single text message. Situation compromised. Accelerate timeline. The chess pieces were moving now, faster than anyone had anticipated, and the silent mansion was about to become the battlefield for a truth 2 decades in the making. The Laurent Foundation Gala was the social event of the season, a carefully orchestrated display of wealth and philanthropy that brought together the elite of American business and society. For Eleanor, watching the preparations unfold was like observing an elaborate theater production. You'll need this, Alexander said, handing her a sleek black evening gown as they finalized their plans in his office. Mother insisted on selecting it herself. Eleanor held the designer dress with uncertainty. I'm supposed to be working as her interpreter, not attending as a guest. You'll be doing both. His eyes met hers with newfound respect. Besides, we need you to have full access to the executive wing while Reed is occupied with the event. Over the past 2 days, a cautious alliance had formed between them. Eleanor had shared all her research, and Alexander had opened doors to company records that had previously been beyond her reach. Together they had discovered a disturbing pattern of financial manipulation, stretching back nearly 15 years, all bearing Thomas Reed's invisible fingerprints. Are you certain Reed won't suspect anything? Eleanor asked. He believes I'm still completely loyal to him, Alexander replied, a hint of bitterness in his tone. The trusted mentor who guided me after my father's death, who helped me navigate my difficult relationship with my mother. His jaw tightened. A relationship he systematically sabotaged. The night of the gala arrived with crystalline clarity. The Laurent mansion transformed into a glittering showcase with hundreds of guests in formal attire, flowing through its meticulously decorated rooms. Champagne fountains sparkled under chandeliers, and live music drifted through the air. Eleanor stood in her suite, staring at her reflection. The black dress fit perfectly, its elegant simplicity making her almost unrecognizable from the housekeeper who had polished these same floors months earlier. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and for the first time in years, she looked like Professor Eleanor Mitchell again. A soft knock announced Vivian's arrival. The Laurent matriarch entered, resplendent in midnight blue that complemented her silver hair. She stopped when she saw Eleanor, her face lighting up with approval. Beautiful, she signed. Like the educator and advocate I remember from the conference in Boston. Eleanor blinked in surprise. You were there? Vivian nodded, signing. 3rd row. Your presentation on integrated learning environments for deaf students was revolutionary. A shadow crossed her face. When I heard what happened to your program, I tried to intervene through the foundation, but I was overruled. The implication hung in the air. Reed had blocked Vivian's attempt to help. Tonight, Vivian signed with determination. We begin to set things right. They entered the gala together, Vivian's hand resting lightly on Eleanor's arm. The grand ballroom hummed with conversation and clinking glasses, the assembled wealth of America's elite almost palpable in the air. Alexander met them at the entrance, immaculate in his tuxedo. For a moment, his eyes lingered on Eleanor, surprise briefly visible before his professional mask returned. "Mother," he greeted Vivian, signing simultaneously. "You look magnificent." Vivian smiled, her hands moving gracefully. "As does Eleanor, though I suspect her mind is on matters beyond fashion tonight." Alexander nodded almost imperceptibly to Eleanor. "Reed is overseeing the charity auction. He'll be occupied for at least 40 minutes. Eleanor translated for Vivian, who responded with a slight nod of understanding. Their plan was in motion. As Vivian moved to greet guests, Alexander guided Eleanor to a quieter corner. His office is on the 3rd floor, East Wing. Security code 4729. He pressed a small device into her hand. "This will copy any files on his computer without leaving traces." "And if he returns early?" Eleanor asked. "I'll have someone text you." His expression grew serious. "Be careful. If Reed realizes what we're doing—" "I know the risks," Eleanor interrupted gently. "I've been living with them for 2 years." Their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them. Mutual respect, shared purpose, and perhaps something more complicated neither was ready to acknowledge. Eleanor slipped away as Alexander returned to his hosting duties. Moving through the mansion with practiced invisibility, a skill honed during her months as staff, she made her way to the executive wing. Reed's office was exactly where Alexander had described, at the end of a plush hallway, its door unmarked but secured with a keypad. Eleanor entered the code, her heart racing as the lock clicked open. Inside, the space was immaculate, almost obsessively so. Files aligned with geometric precision, surfaces gleaming, not a paper out of place. This was the workspace of a man who controlled his environment absolutely. Eleanor moved to the computer, inserting the device Alexander had given her. As it began copying files, she systematically searched the office, careful to return everything to its exact position. In the 3rd drawer of a filing cabinet, behind perfectly organized folders, she found it. A false back concealing a slim leather portfolio. Inside were documents Eleanor immediately recognized: board minutes from Westridge College, financial transfer authorizations, and most damning of all, copies of Vivian's letters to Alexander, each marked "refused" in what Eleanor now recognized as Reed's handwriting. As she photographed each document with her phone, a text message arrived. "Reed leaving auction, 5 minutes max." Eleanor quickly replaced the portfolio and closed the drawer. The copying device showed 98% complete on the computer. 4 minutes remaining. 3, 2. The device beeped softly, indicating completion. Eleanor removed it and did a final scan of the office, ensuring everything was exactly as she'd found it. Just as she reached for the door handle, voices approached in the hallway. One unmistakably Reed's. Eleanor froze, heart pounding. "Concerning behavior from Alexander," Reed was saying, suddenly interested in old Westridge College investments. "You think he suspects something?" the other voice asked. "Let's just say I'm accelerating certain plans," Reed replied. "Starting tonight." The voices moved closer. Eleanor looked frantically around the office, spotting a closet door. She slipped inside just as the office door opened. Through a narrow crack, she watched Reed enter with a man she didn't recognize. Older, expensively dressed, with the confident bearing of old money. "The Mitchell woman is a problem," the older man said. "I told you to deal with her when she applied." "I didn't know it was her," Reed defended. "The staffing agency used her married name. By the time I realized, she had already connected with Vivian. And now she's connected with Alexander." The man shook his head in disgust. 15 years of careful management, undone in a matter of days. Reed moved to his computer, tapping keys. "Not undone yet. I've prepared contingencies." Eleanor's blood ran cold as she realized what they were discussing. Her phone buzzed in her hand. Another text from Alexander. "Where are you?" She silenced it instantly, but not before Reed's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" Both men went silent, listening. Eleanor held her breath, pressing herself against the back of the closet. "Check the hallway," Reed instructed. As the other man moved to the door, Reed approached the closet. Eleanor could hear his breathing, feel his presence just inches away. The office phone rang suddenly, startlingly loud in the tense silence. Reed hesitated, then moved to answer it. "Yes?" His expression changed. "I'll be right there." He hung up, turning to his companion. "Security issue at the main entrance. We'll continue this later." After they left, Eleanor waited 30 agonizing seconds before slipping out. Her hands trembled as she texted Alexander, "Got everything. Reed has accomplice. Overheard plans for contingencies tonight." She made her way back to the gala, struggling to maintain composure. The glittering crowd now seemed oblivious to the dangerous currents flowing beneath the surface of their elegant evening. Eleanor found Vivian first, her expressive face immediately registering concern at Eleanor's appearance. "What happened?" she signed discreetly. "We need to find your son," Eleanor signed back. "Now." They located Alexander near the stage, completing his duties as the auction concluded. His eyes found Eleanor's across the room, immediately recognizing the urgency in her expression. As he made his way toward them, Eleanor scanned the crowd for Reed. He was nowhere to be seen, a fact that worried her more than if he had been visible. "We need to leave," she told Alexander when he reached them. "Reed knows." He was discussing contingencies with someone. An older man, well-dressed, seemed familiar with your family. Alexander's face darkened. "Hargrove. William Hargrove. My father's former business partner." Vivian's hands moved sharply, her eyes wide with alarm. "William is here? After all this time?" Before Alexander could respond, the lights throughout the mansion flickered, then went out completely. The crowd gasped collectively. Then nervous laughter spread as people assumed it was a momentary outage. But Eleanor felt Alexander's hand close around her wrist, his voice low and urgent in her ear. "The security system runs on a separate generator. This is deliberate." Emergency lights activated, casting an eerie glow across the ballroom. Alexander pulled both Eleanor and his mother closer. "We need to get to my office now." As they moved through the confused crowd, Eleanor caught a glimpse of Reed watching from a balcony above, his face illuminated by the screen of his phone. Their eyes met briefly, and the cold calculation in his expression sent a chill through her. The game had shifted from exposure to survival, and as the mansion descended into darkness, Eleanor realized that the silent war for truth had just become very, very loud. The emergency lighting cast long shadows as Alexander guided Eleanor and Vivian through the mansion's back corridors. Staff hurried past with flashlights, attempting to manage the increasingly restless gala guests. "The security room," Alexander explained as they moved quickly up a service stairwell. "If Reed has compromised the mansion's systems, that's where we'll find proof." Eleanor translated for Vivian, whose expression remained resolute despite the chaos. The older woman's hands moved in the dim light. "William Hargrove and Thomas Reed. I should have seen it years ago." "What's the connection?" Eleanor signed back, breathless from their rapid pace. Vivian's response chilled her. "They were with my husband the day he died." Alexander halted at a heavy metal door, punching in a security code. The panel flashed red, denying access. "He's changed the protocols," Alexander muttered, pulling out his phone. "Davidson!" He barked to his head of security when the call connected. "Emergency override on the security suite. Authorization Laurent Alpha." The door clicked open moments later, revealing a darkened room lined with monitors. Most displayed static, but 3 screens still functioned, showing different areas of the mansion. "The system's been selectively disabled," Alexander observed, moving to the main console. "Targeted, not complete." Eleanor scanned the functioning monitors, freezing when she spotted Reed and Hargrove in what appeared to be Alexander's office. They were accessing his computer, Hargrove watching as Reed typed rapidly. "Look," she pointed. "They're in your office." Alexander's expression hardened as he watched Reed methodically breaching his personal files. "He's transferring data, probably wiping evidence and planting false information simultaneously." He turned to a secondary console, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I can lock them in remotely." Suddenly, Reed looked directly at the security camera, a cold smile spreading across his face. He held up a phone, displaying a text message too small to read on the monitor. Then deliberately he pressed send. Alexander's phone buzzed in his hand. He looked down, his face draining of color. "What is it?" Eleanor asked. Without answering, Alexander tried calling someone, his movements increasingly urgent as the call went unanswered. "The letters," he finally said. "They're going after my mother's letters." Eleanor translated for Vivian, whose hands responded with alarm. "The box in your suite. It contains more than just letters. There's evidence of what really happened to my husband." They raced toward Eleanor's suite, Alexander explaining as they ran. Reed's message said, "Insurance policy activated. You have 10 minutes to accept terms or lose everything." "What terms?" Eleanor asked. "My immediate resignation, full control of the foundation transferred to Hargrove, and," his jaw tightened, "your immediate termination and silence." They reached Eleanor's suite to find the door ajar, the room in disarray. The wooden box was gone. "No," Eleanor whispered. surveying the destruction. Her laptop lay smashed on the floor, drawers emptied, mattress slashed. Alexander's phone rang. He answered, placing it on speaker. Such a shame about those letters. Reed's voice purred through the speaker. 15 years of a mother's love gone in an instant, though I suppose that's fitting considering they were never meant to be read in the first place. What do you want, Reed? Alexander demanded. I've already sent the terms. You have 8 minutes remaining. Reed's voice hardened. 15 years I've managed your empire, Alexander. 15 years I've protected you from your mother's manipulation, from Hargrove's greed, from your own weakness, by stealing from my company, by intercepting my mother's letters. Alexander's voice vibrated with controlled rage. A cold laugh came through the speaker. I built your company. While you were playing tech genius, I was making the connections, silencing the critics, eliminating the obstacles, like that meddling professor and her fraud allegations. Eleanor stepped forward. You diverted the endowment funds. You destroyed the deaf studies program. Ms. Mitchell, or should I say Professor? Reed's tone dripped with contempt. That program was collateral damage. Westridge College was just one of many institutions where we redirected resources. Your mistake was noticing. Where is the box? Alexander demanded. Safe, for now. Reed's voice turned businesslike. The terms, Alexander. Your decision. Vivian stepped forward, taking the phone from her son. Her hands moved rapidly, signing to Eleanor. Tell him I know about the insulin. Eleanor hesitated, confused by the apparent non sequitur, but translated. Mrs. Laurent says she knows about the insulin. A long silence followed. When Reed spoke again, his voice had lost its confidence. That's impossible. Vivian continued signing, her movements precise despite the emotion behind them. I found Edward's medical records, the altered insulin doses, the deliberate miscalculations. You and Hargrove killed my husband to gain control of his patents. As Eleanor translated, Alexander's expression transformed from confusion to dawning horror. My father was diabetic, he said quietly. His death was attributed to insulin shock. An unfortunate accident, Reed replied, his composure cracking. Tragic, but common with his condition. Not an accident, Eleanor translated as Vivian's hands flew with increasing intensity. The evidence is in those letters. Medical reports I had reviewed after becoming suspicious. Reports that disappeared from official records but which I had copied. Edward suspected you both were stealing from him. He was planning to remove you from the company. Reed's breathing had become audible over the line. Hargrove, they heard him call, panic edging his voice. We need to accelerate now. Alexander leaned toward the phone. It's over, Reed. The copies I made of your files while you were busy with the gala, they're already with my attorneys. The evidence Eleanor gathered from your office tonight, already uploaded to secure servers. You've lost. Then I have nothing to lose by destroying everything, Reed snarled. Starting with these precious letters. The line went dead. Alexander turned to Eleanor, his decision immediate. My office. That's where they were headed with the box. They raced back through the mansion, now in complete darkness as even the emergency lights had failed. Using their phone flashlights, they navigated corridors filled with confused guests being escorted toward exits by security personnel. When they reached Alexander's office wing, they found the doors sealed by the security lockdown Alexander had initiated earlier. The override, Eleanor suggested. Alexander shook his head. Reed would have disabled it by now. Vivian tapped Eleanor's shoulder, signing rapidly. The service passage, Edward showed me once, behind the bookcase in the adjacent room. They followed her lead to a small study next to Alexander's office. Vivian moved directly to a bookcase, her fingers finding a hidden lever with practiced ease despite the years that had passed. The bookcase slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. Alexander looked at his mother with newfound respect. You never cease to surprise me. They moved through the dark corridor, emerging behind a similar hidden door in Alexander's office. Through a crack, they could see Reed and Hargrove hunched over a small fire burning in a metal trash can, feeding pages into the flames. Vivian's wooden box lay open on the desk, half its contents already turned to ash. 15 years of manipulation, gone, Hargrove was saying, his aristocratic voice tinged with satisfaction. She nearly ruined everything with those accusations. The medical reports? Reed asked, rifling through remaining papers. Already burning, Hargrove confirmed. Nothing left to connect us to Edward's unfortunate accident. Alexander pushed the hidden door open fully, stepping into the office with Eleanor and Vivian behind him. I wouldn't be so certain about that. he said coldly. Both men spun around, Reed instinctively reaching inside his jacket. Security is already on their way, Alexander continued, his voice deadly calm. And as I mentioned earlier, copies of everything you're burning have already been secured. Hargrove recovered first, his face assuming a mask of injured dignity. Alexander, you can't possibly believe these absurd accusations. Your mother has always been unstable, especially after your father's death. Unstable? Eleanor translated as Vivian's hands moved with righteous fury. Is that what you call a mother trying to protect her son from her husband's murderers? Reed edged toward the door, but Alexander blocked his path. 15 years, Reed, 15 years of lies. 15. I did what was necessary, Reed hissed. Your father was weak, sentimental. He would have run the company into the ground with his ethical concerns and charitable impulses. His voice hardened. You were no better, always seeking your mother's approval, always questioning my guidance. I had to separate you from her influence. The full weight of the betrayal seemed to settle on Alexander's shoulders. You kept me from my mother, made me believe she had abandoned me. Also, you could control the company through me. And it worked. Reed's composure finally shattered. We built an empire. The Laurent name means something because of me. The Laurent name meant something long before you, Thomas. Vivian signed, Eleanor translating. It meant integrity, compassion, the values my husband died trying to protect. Security personnel burst through the main door, quickly restraining both Reed and Hargrove despite their protests. As they were led away, Alexander approached the burning trash can, using a letter opener to salvage what he could from the flames. Most were beyond recovery, but a few pages remained partially intact, fragments of a mother's love preserved despite 15 years of deliberate silence. The mansion gradually returned to normal as security teams restored power and calmed the remaining guests. The gala's abrupt end would be explained as a technical malfunction, the arrests handled quietly to avoid public scandal. In the aftermath, Eleanor stood on the terrace where she had first shared breakfast with Vivian, watching the first light of dawn touch the gardens below. The events of the night felt almost dreamlike in the soft morning light. She felt rather than heard Alexander join her, his presence now familiar in a way that would have seemed impossible days earlier. The authorities have everything they need, he said quietly. Reed and Hargrove will face charges for financial fraud, evidence tampering, and, he paused, my father's death. Eleanor nodded, relief and exhaustion washing over her in equal measure. And Westridge College? The Deaf Studies program. The Laurent Foundation will fully restore the endowment, with additional funding for expansion. A small smile touched his lips. They'll need a qualified director, someone with experience and passion for the work. Eleanor turned to him, hope rising cautiously within her. Are you offering me my job back? I'm offering you the chance to rebuild what was taken from you, Alexander said. And perhaps, he added, his voice softening, the chance for us both to build something new as well. From the doorway, Vivian watched them, her hands moving in a small private gesture only she could see. Finally, the silence is broken. In the quiet morning light, as the Laurent mansion awakened to a new reality, Eleanor realized that some stories indeed didn't need words to be heard. Sometimes the loudest truths emerged from silence, and sometimes the simplest acts of kindness truly did change everything.